the quiet, misty morning, when the moon has gone to bed, when the sparrows stop their singing, and the sky is clear and red.
This exhibition is called Celebration of Life. It's inspired by the Day of the Dead, and that's a time when the veil traditionally between the living and the dead is very permeable and very thin. And the whole celebration of life is a journey, it's a narrative. There are two parts to this. The first is the vigil, and that is a time when it's the sombre approach to initial grief and loss. And the second weekend is called the chorus, and that is when all of the community comes together and there's a feeling of healing through community, through friends and family. There are over 180 school children involved, and they have all done their own artwork, which is in response to the themes of the Day of the Dead. We've held workshops in both schools, and they've all produced their own artwork around the symbol of nature, specifically around moths and butterflies, because butterflies are very important symbols for the Day of the Dead. And of course it's a much better way to introduce the concept of loss and death and visiting souls coming back through that symbol of the butterfly and the moth. Another aspect that we've done with the schools is not only looking at the moths and the butterflies, but we always use the symbol of the marigolds. And marigolds in the Mexican Day of the Dead they're very much used as something to attract back the souls on the Day of the Dead. And it is thought that the scent and the smell and the colour will bring back the souls to the land of the living. So it's very much a pathfinder, and the children have made marigolds out of tissue paper, and there's something rather beautiful about it because they very much reflect the stone carved marigolds in the ceiling of the dome of the chapel. And in that particular element, the Victorians, they had these secret messages through their flowers, and marigolds were a symbol of sorrow and sadness. And something that I really enjoy about this project is, of course, that contrasts beautifully with the vibrant colour and scent and smell of the idea of marigolds in Day of the Dead. There are some really interesting creative arts organisations around here. Of course, we've got the Royal College of Art nearby, and we've had some shows with the Royal College of Art artists.
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine all upon you.
And we've also got, our neighbours, the Royal Society of Sculptors in Caroline Worthington, and we've partnered with them on this Day of the Dead. And when you look at Brompton Cemetery, it is a place full of the 3D, full of sculpture, full of volume. So it seemed very fitting to hold something that celebrates sculpture as well in this beautiful space.
Brompton Cemetery was opened in 1840. The first interment was a lady called Emma Shaw, about whom we know very little, but she died in childbirth. But the Victorian cemeteries came about in answer to the overcrowding of churchyards, particularly in London and other larger industrialised cities. And they were intended to always be places of refuge, places where you could have your loved one buried safely and with dignity, but they were also intended to be places for the living as well, places where people could come and enjoy fresh air.
Having wonderful settings and really attractive landscaping, thanks to the Royal Parks. And the chapel is really the pinnacle of the cemetery. Following the restoration in 2018, it became really a wonderful venue for artists and for creativity. Today's event was really inspiring. It was wonderful to see so many young people in our cemetery celebrating all of the arts and their creativity. Rachel Goodison, who's our artist in residence for the Friends, has been really inspiring young people and bringing life into the cemetery.
When we were discussing the project, we wanted it to be more of a celebration of life. So it starts off in a very kind of solemn tone, but then pretty quickly it changes into a celebratory note. And that's reflected in the choreography, and it's also reflected in the soundscape. And the soundscape, we worked very closely with Zivi. She's done a brilliant job creating it. She has taken lots of sounds from the cemetery and incorporated them into the music, the soundscape, which very much reflects the theme that we portray with the Day of the Dead. It has been really great working with the children. This is the first time they worked with a setting like this. They usually used to work on a stage, so this is the first time they've performed in a chapel, on the round, and in the cemetery. So it's been very different for them, and it's been a great experience for them.
My piece for the Celebration of Life exhibition at the Brompton Chapel really kind of reflects on the themes of loss and remembrance, but through working with existing garments that will have belonged to people, unknown people to me. These garments I collected from a local dry cleaners, and I was very interested in obviously considering the reasons why these clothes will have been uncollected or abandoned, but then really reflecting on the narratives and stories that these garments, naturally will retain and hold. I was very interested in thinking about remembrance through possessions and reflecting on the kind of memory that materials and clothing retain.
The Royal Parks are hugely honoured to be able to hold events such as this, and we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Friends of Brompton Cemetery who help put on the arts programmes that we're able to share with the local community.
I think it's really important that people sort of recognise that the cemetery, whilst it is a place of reflection, and it is a historical area, bringing life into the cemetery is all what it is about. And the fact that the Mexican idea of celebrating sort of life and death is not something to be frightened of, and it's not something that we shouldn't talk about. I think it is a wonderful way of putting a different lens on what we should be doing within the cemeteries.
My flowers will not have an end. My songs are not going to stop. I, the singer, elevates them. They split, they spread. Today is a great privilege to be here because it has always been a dream to do something in a cemetery, because this is what happens in Mexico. People go to the cemeteries and decorate, clean the graves, and they put flowers, they spend the night. And how they spend the night? Well, they spend the night singing, eating, and so it's really wonderful to be here today in Brompton Cemetery, which is a very beautiful cemetery, but also it gives us the opportunity to do something similar to what they do in Mexico. Precisely what we have here today. We have a bit of dance, we have a bit of poetry, we have a bit of art, we have the food, we have the drinks, and we have people together, coming together. This is what it's about. It's about bringing people together and having a good time. And it's about remembering our ancestors, our closest loved ones who are no longer here with us, but in a happy day, in a happy way.
My work here in the Brompton Chapel is a reflection of a practice where I have worked with dyeing of textiles, but also working with biopolymers. I brought in a steel structure, which for me is a passage or a gateway between worlds. That drapes from the structure is really about these veils between our worlds, between matter and spirit. I took the structural shape from many of the structures that I have seen around the cemetery. Having the work placed within the chapel as opposed to having it be in a gallery, of course, changes the narrative completely. It draws on the inspiration not just from the cemetery, but also from the community that's been involved. The fact that you get to be in a space and hold the space for your own grief together with other people, but in a celebratory mode, which I'm from the northern traditions in Scandinavia. It's very like the English. It's something that isn't celebrated. We have a moment and then we let it pass and we let it go, and we'd rather not speak of it. But when you come together and they're singing and dancing, it takes on the mode of a celebration beyond the grief and this memory of of how we're connecting to the loved ones who may no longer be present, but definitely there's a thinking about them.
Brompton Cemetery is now managed by the Royal Parks, and it does remain a working cemetery, although it has huge historical significance and it has great significance for ecology purposes. It is to some degree a nature reserve, but it is also a working cemetery, and so it's hugely important to us that that be honoured, and an event like this where it is honouring, it is a celebration of life in the midst of death, is a wonderful project to be involved with. The artist in residence at Brompton, Rachel, has done an amazing job in bringing together local schools and also the local colleges, come together and just put on this amazing performance with sculpture, with song, dance, and it's a lovely reminder that actually there is always life, even in a place like this.
Joy. Eating ice cream with friends. The click of Lego. Colouring my paper all red and picnics with Mum and Dad. The smell of biscuits baking. Ghost stories at night. Jumping on the trampoline and drawing rainbows with my crayons.
This has been an amazing project, and we've worked with over 200 people that have been involved from all the different local organisations. The sheer joy that's been brought about by working with the artists, working with Brompton Cemetery, with the Royal Parks, the Royal Society of Sculptors, all the individual artists, all the children involved, sort of about 200 of them, and the dancing and the singing, so much effort and care has been put into it. And what I really hope that people take away from this whole festival over 10 days is the positive messaging that we receive from other cultures. I also hope that that people take away with them the idea that a place like Brompton Cemetery is essentially a parkland as well. It's not just a place where the dead are laid to rest. It is also somewhere that people can come and enjoy life and living and the atmosphere of a parkland. And the chapel itself, yes, it is a working chapel for memorials and funerals, but it is also a destination place for the creative arts and for the community to really gather together and create something really special.